it is interesting to be gathered on Christmas morning in an interfaith group where over half of the group, based on past surveys we've taken in the circle, over half the group is decidedly anti-Christian and have come from Christian backgrounds, and that's why they're decidedly anti-Christian. And a good number of people in this room have Buddhist leanings. There are more than a couple of pagans, and there's at least one agnostic here. So what we focus on in the circle is not what separates us, but what divides us. And not that naturally separates us, but the dividing lines we choose for ourselves. There are some things that naturally separate us. I don't care. It's not politically correct to say it, but there are some fundamental differences between those who are in long-term relationships and those who aren't. Just joking. You can draw the lines anywhere you want if you want to draw lines. But in the circle we're into finding that place that is beyond the lines, and where we have what we have in common lifted up to the highest level, and where we have in common that which is shadow, which is pain, which is fear, also acknowledged and allowed to be amongst us. Because we cannot have light without the dark. And we cannot pursue the glow without also acknowledging the harsh. Because they're both there in the human experience. And what we're here to do is embrace that intersection between the spiritual and the secular, the human and the divine. How many of you here are from San Antonio or have been here quite a while? Pretty much everybody. There's a couple of visitors from out of town. Here in San Antonio, one of our foundational stories is the Battle of the Alamo. Happened in 1836, when a small group of very brave, freedom-minded people faced off a large army of very evil people. And laid down their lives so that more brave, freedom-seeking people could finally die for their freedom later on in another battle or something like that. I say that half-jokingly because that was 184 years ago, and in recent years, the central myth story, of the Alamo has unraveled. And we're finding there are multiple perspectives about that story. Some people think it was a very brave band of primarily Caucasian men facing death against the evil Mexicans. Some think it was the evil colonialists taking over land that the Native Americans really should have had, but was stolen by the Spaniards, and then in the process being stolen by would-be Americans. And then there are some people who say it's all fake news. You can't trust any of it. That's all. What I'm saying is that 184 years later, right here living in San Antonio, the central story of the Alamo has fractured, and there are 3 or 4 or 6 different points of view about what happened there and how it should best be commemorated in the new improved Alamo Plaza that's being designed by either wonderful cultural liberal people or awful people bent on destroying history, or those who are completely into ruining the Native American burial grounds, or those who are about commemorating the fight for slavery or against the fight for slavery. I don't know. I lose track of how many different stories are unfolding around the new Alamo Plaza. But you get the picture. In 184 years, this thing that happened not a stone's throw from where we're sitting, well, okay, a few miles from where we're sitting, is no longer one story, it's many stories. So too, the story of Jesus the Christ being born in a manger in Bethlehem is a story that was passed by word to mouth among many different people with many different points of view about what that was and what it meant. And it wasn't written down for at least 110, some say 150 years after Christ was born. And that story, told from many different points of view, got codified into what we call the New Testament 350 years after it happened under Constantinople. That's a whole different story. The point is, there's no way of knowing exactly what the Christmas story means. And there's certainly no way in 2022 for me to tell you what it should mean. But I'm here to consider the possibility that it means something very important, because the story is still being told 2,000 years later. And what I think the underlying truth of that story is that there is an innocence that is waiting to be born and reborn in all of us as we embrace the child within, being born in consciousness, as we face into the possibility that in the heart of darkness, in the most difficult of times, there is always the possibility of new consciousness being born, of a Christ child saying, "Come," in silence, in mystery. I'm not a Bible scholar. I never claimed to be. I've studied a fair amount. I've been studying theology professionally and avocationally for 40 years now plus, and the more I study, the less I understand. But this I know. We as humans have a deep-seated need to hope and to think that things are going to get better. Over there, if we follow that star over there, it'll lead us to the answer. If we get thinner, if we get richer, if we find the perfect partner, if we have the perfect job over there, if we follow that star over there, it's going to lead us to a place of happiness. More happiness, bigger happiness, shinier happiness, always better happiness. And what the Christmas story tells us, as the story of the awakening of the Buddha tells us, is that that joy we seek, that peace we seek, that happiness we seek is not over there, but it's here, in the humble manger of our hearts, in the Christ child being reborn in us in this moment as we allow that to be true. The Buddha being reborn in the stillness of our hearts as we allow that to be true. You may or may not agree with what I'm saying. I'm not here to argue about anything. I'm just here to say why I'm celebrating today is not because I got a bunch of presents. And I got a bunch of presents. It's not just because I have a faith to declare, and I have a faith to declare. And the faith that I'm here to declare is that everything that is ever waiting for me in the future is present in me now. That better self, that smarter self, that richer self, that happier self is right in me right now. I don't need any of the rest of that. And that's what the Christ child reminds me of. It's important for me to remember that Christ was not a Christian. He was a young Jewish child born into a Jewish family. The very first book of the New Testament, the book of Matthew, the very first 2 chapters are what? The genealogy of the 42 generations that came before Jesus in the Jewish lineage. The very first thing the New Testament does is point out from the beginning of Judaism to the moment Christ was born, this is the lineage. In order to what? To establish that he had some legitimacy in the context of the religion of his time. And as Jesus grew into his ministry over 34 years, or 33 years, or 32 years, depending on which scholar you believe. He was not he was not trying to found a new religion. He was calling people back to be better Jews, to get out of the legalistic, divisive, multi-sectarian kind of Judaism they've gotten to practice, and that was focused on rules and on buying penitents at temple and buying and selling favors with God through offerings, in some people's opinion. That's what Jesus was about, was calling people back to a renewal of their connection to Spirit. Over the next 2,000 years, there have been literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different definitions and interpretations and iterations of what it is that Jesus taught, for sure. Maybe. But apart from all of the maybes and all of the denominations and all the various stories about Jesus and what his relationship was to Judaism and is to Judaism, what his relation could be to Buddhism or could not be to Buddhism, despite all those theories and words, the Christ child keeps inviting me. I don't say it has to be you, but inviting me to be humble and come back to this place of not knowing and just opening afresh to the shining light that is within and all around. The light that invites me to shut up, stop talking so much. The light that invites me to stop proving that I'm right and that you're wrong or less than or different from. The light that invites me to see the light in you. Jesus Bunny, Jesus Leslie, Jesus Michael, Jesus Crush, Jesus Rudi, Jesus Christ. Christ Bunny, Christ Leslie, Christ Michael. Those are all just words and formations that I put in my head to try to make sense of something that's so mysterious and so big and so ineffable that libraries have been filled with thousands, hundreds of thousands of books trying to explain it. Mostly because it's easier to talk about and write about and argue about and think about than to actually do the process of being still. And coming back to the manger, manger, the thing that animals ate from. That's where Jesus was born into. The animals that are eating at my heart and feed at my fear. That's where the Christ lives in me. That makes sense? To the extent that it makes sense to you, I invite you to turn within with me as we follow yonder star. Not low there to the far east, to some other divine being over there, but to the manger within. I'm going to ask Michael to play the sound of the heartbeat. Might be the heartbeat of the Christ child within you. To feel into the rhythm of new life being born in the humility of this moment. As we come out of our heads, out of the place of good ideas, come out of that desire to follow yonder star over there to some other person, some other wisdom, some other insight, some other purchase that will make things better, and to come to this moment, to the newness being born here. If thoughts are still spinning through your head, perhaps Just feel a relaxation coming from the top and center of your scalp, down through the forehead, relaxing the muscles of your face, dropping the social mask of smiling, frowning, the mask that has makeup and wrinkles or doesn't. Letting all of that go and simply sinking down past the face and the mind, past the throat with all the words said and unsaid, and sinking into the heart, into the lowly manger where the Christ child waits, the goddess waits, your Buddha nature waits. Beyond all definition, there is a newness that awaits. If at any point your mind drifts off to other thoughts and fantasies, wants to argue with this narrative, just come back, won't you? Come back to the heartbeat. Of this infinite self, new, shiny, with unlimited potential, a field of infinite possibilities unfolding here in the silence. There is nothing you need to do to make this happen. You are simply returning your attention to what is and always has been. Love being born and reborn and renewed in your heart. Every moment, every day. Particularly now as you turn your attention with humility with all the pride of Mother Mary pouring down upon you. With all the wisdom of the visiting Magi surrounding you. With all the love and the adoration of the angels and the shepherds, all of creation gathered around to say, welcome back. Welcome back to the truth of who you are, oh holy, holy child, oh lovely, loving one. Breathing into this truth, feeling the light radiating through every cell and fiber of your being, claiming and naming the truth of who you truly are, a divine being made manifest in this human form. Now, and now, and now. It's Christmas in the ashram, and all is well. And so it is. Amen.